So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the practice paper of 2023 Foundation Set 1 Paper 1, which is a non-calculated paper. Now as always I'll include a question breakdown so you can see which question refers to which topic to make your revision or reviewing each question if you make a mistake that a little bit easier. So let's get started on this Foundation practice paper of 2023 Set 1 Paper 1, which is a non-calculated paper. So looking at question 1, it says write 1/10 as a percentage. Now when you're converting fractions to percentages, particularly on the foundation paper, what you want to try and do is try and find an equivalent fraction where the denominator is 100. So here we need to multiply by 10. So I do the same to the numerator, so times that by 10, and 1 times 10 is 10. And then once it's over 100, your answer will just be the numerator, so it's just going to be 10%. Then write 0.9 as a percentage. Well, again, 0.9 is the same as 9 over 10, and if we write that as equivalent fraction, then we get 90, so it's going to be 90%. Then with question 2, it says write 8/10 as a fraction in its simplest form. So we just want to think about two numbers that go into both 8 and 10, and that's going to be 2. So we divide both numbers by 2, in which we get 4/5. Then for question 3, it's a case of collecting the like terms. So with this, all we need to do is collect the x's together. So I've got a positive 4x plus 3x, which is 7x, and then I've got 7y minus 2y, which is 5y. To question 4, it says the table shows what 20 students do for lunch, and we've got sandwiches, school dinners and go home, and the question is asking us to draw a bar chart with this information. Now with this, what you need to do is you need to make sure that your labeling is correct. So we could say lunch, and then what you also need to do is you need to make sure that it is drawn correctly with a ruler, and that there is equal space between each of the bars. So you can see I've got an equal gap of 1. You could have 2, that might fit, but you also need to make sure that the thickness of each bar is the same. So again, just make sure that it's labelled. You've got a good scale, you've got gaps between the bars, and they need to be equal width. You also need to make sure that the bars are equal width, and that also that the bars are at the correct height. Now you might use a different thickness. I've used a bar of 2. Each bar's got 2 squares. You could have 1, that would be absolutely fine. Labeling, you can label if you want. It's very tight in terms of labeling the big words like sandwiches, school dinners and go home. So I've just abbreviated with the single letters, and that would be absolutely fine as well. So just make sure that you are doing it. Obviously your numbers need to make sure that they're going up to at least up to 8, but if you want to go up to 9 and 10, then that would be absolutely fine as well. Moving on to question 5, it says write these numbers in order starting with the smallest. So when you are ordering decimals, you want to make sure you've got the same number of numbers after the decimal point. So here I've got 7.10, 7.11 and 7.01. So then treat these numbers as if the decimal point wasn't even there. So we've got 701, 710, 711. So here we've got 7.01, 7.10 and 7.11. And again, if you didn't include the 0 on that one, that would be absolutely fine, but they would still be in correct order. For question 6 says work out 46 take away 2.5 times 4. So you need to remember BIDMAS, which we need to do this bit first. Now 2.5 times 4 is 10. So I've got 46 take away 10, which gives me an answer of 36. Moving on to question 7, it says right here are 3 events on an ordinary fair die. So A is to roll an odd number, B is to roll a number greater than 6, and C is to roll a 3. Draw and label the arrows to show the probabilities of events B and C on the probability scale. And so here, so the probability of getting a number greater than 6, well that's going to be 0, so that's going to be here, so that's B. And to roll a 3, well it's going to be 1 out of 6. So that's going to be here. Then moving on to question 8, it says AB is a straight line and we want to work out the size of angle X. Well, angles on a straight line add up to 180, so I've got to do 180 minus 21 minus 47. Well, 21 plus 47 is 68, so then I've got to do 180 minus 68. And again, let me just not cheat in terms of this. So we've got 2, 1, 1, so we've got 112. Then moving on to question 9, it says 68 students go on a school trip. Each student will be given a bottle of water. Bottles available in packs of 10. How many of these packs are going to be needed? So for this, let's have a look. So we need to see how many 10s go into 68. So here we've got 68 divided by 10, which is going to be 6.8. So roughly we can't have 6.8 packs. So we're going to need to buy 7. Then for question 10, it says there are 10 discs in a bag, 5 are red, 3 are green and the rest are blue. A count is chosen at random, work out the probability that it's going to be blue. Well, here we're going to have 5, take away 4, 5, 3, so that means we've got 2 blue discs. And so therefore the probability is going to be 2 over 10, which simplified gives me 1/5. Then moving on to question 11, it says here is a centimetre grid and we need to plot these coordinates. So A is at 5, 3, so remember we go across and then up, or vertical movement, so that's A. B is at 5 minus 3, which is here. And C is at minus 5, 0, which is here. Now if I join each of those lines together with a ruler, let me just do just that. And the question is asking us what type of triangle is this going to produce? Well, hopefully you can spot that the lines AC and BC are going to be equal, therefore making this triangle an isosceles triangle, and that's what I just need to write. But you want to make sure that you've plotted the coordinates and you've drawn it, and so we could just write isosceles. Then for question 12a, it says work out the value of 2 cubed. Well, 2 cubed is 2 times 2 times 2. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. Work out the value of 10 to the power of 4. Oh, don't know what's gone on there. So let me just get rid of that. So here we've got 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. So here we've got 100 times 10 is 1,000 times 10 again gives us 10,000. Then work out the value of the square root of 144. Well, that's going to be 12. Then solving this equation, we want to add 7. So that becomes 2x equals 17. And then we want to divide by 2. So x equals 17 divided by 2. Or you can write it as a mixed number. So we can write it as 8.5. Or we can write it as a decimal, which is 8.5. So any of those answers would be absolutely fine. Question 14, it says Ian has 80 pence, Sam has £4. Sam gives Ian some money so that they both have the same amount. How much does Sam give Ian? So the total amount that they both have is going to be £4.80. Now if they both have the same, that means that each of them will have £2.40. So how much more money does Ian need to give? Well, if I do 4 take away £2.40, well, that's going to give me £1.60. So how much money does Ian give? Well, it's going to be £1.60. Then moving on to question 15, it says the diagram shows the position of 3 towns. It says write down the 3-figure bearing from A from B. So we're starting here, and what we want to do is we want to measure this angle here. Now, if you've got a protractor, obviously it's going to be very difficult for you to measure what this angle is. And let me just make sure that we can see the letter B, but this is the angle that we need to measure. Now, if you've got a protractor, you can only measure 180 degrees on it. So this part of the angle is 180. So the next thing I then need to do is to measure what this angle here is going to be. And if I use my protractor, that this angle here is going to be roughly around about 30 degrees. So if I then just simply add those numbers up, so the total bearing is going to be 180 plus 30, which is 210. Now on the mark scheme they would accept any answer between 208 to 212, so any of those would be fine, but I make out that the actual answer is 210. Moving on to question 15b, it says work out the actual straight line distance from C to A. So we need to work out this, measure this line here with a ruler, and if I do that correctly, that on my ruler I make this out to be roughly around 7 centimeters. So then, and what they would do is again they would accept any answer between 6.8 to 7.2 centimeters, and then we then need to multiply that by 50 kilometers. So we've got 7 times 50, or your distance multiplied by 50, so I get a total distance of 350. Then moving on to question 16, it says that a small theatre has 21 rows of seats, 9 seats in each row. An adult ticket costs £8, a child ticket costs £5, and the theatre has sold tickets for every single seat. The manager estimates that £1,250 was raised from these tickets, and we know that 90 children tickets were sold. Check whether the manager's estimate was close to the exact amount raised. So let's first of all work out the total number of seats. So the total number of seats, well, for that I need to use this information here, so it's going to be 21 times 9. Now 21 times 9, let me just work that out, so I've got 9, 18. So then what that then becomes is 189. Now from this, what we then got to do is we then need to work out how many adult tickets there were. So adult tickets, and that's going to, how do I work that out? Well, that's going to be 189 minus 90, because there's 90 children tickets, and that gives me an answer of 99. So then from this, what we then got to do is we then need to work out the total ticket price. So the total ticket price, so for adults there were 99, so it's going to be 99 times 8. So if I just do 99 times 8 here, and that becomes 72, and then we've got another 72 plus 7 gives me 79, so that's going to be 792. Then for the children tickets, well, there's 90, so that's going to be 90 times 5. So again, 90 and a 5, so that's 0, and then we've got 45, so that's £450. Pop a 0 there, let me just get rid of that. We've got 450. So then the total price, what I then need to do is add these total amounts up. So I've got 792 plus 450. So I've got 2, 4, and then carry the 1, and then we've got 8 plus 4, which is 12. So it's 1242. So how good is his estimate? Well, his manager's pretty close. So here, so the manager's estimate is good, as 1,242 is close to 1250. It's actually a decent approximation. We're rounded to the nearest 10, or actually not rounded to the nearest 10, but yeah, I would say it's pretty close. Moving on to question 17, it says here is some information about groups of animals, and the question is asking us to write down the number of dark furred dogs to light furred dogs as a ratio. So here we've got 7 to 12, so it's going to be dark, which is 7 to 14, and then we divide both numbers by 7, so we get 1 to 2. It then says what percentage of cats have dark fur. Well, the total number of cats is going to be 20, and how many of those have dark fur, which is going to be 15. So then to write as a percentage, well, that's going to be 3/4, and we know that 3/4 is 75%. So then the final answer here is 75. Alternatively, you could have gone from 15 to 20. We want to convert that as a fraction over 100, so we times that by 5. So if I times 15 by 5, I get 75 as well. It then says that the next question 18, it says Ding says if you divide any multiple by 5 by 2, the answer is never a whole number. Is he correct? And write a calculation to support your answer. So if we find the multiples of 5, let's go for 10, and we divide that by 2, that gives me an answer of 5. And as you can see, 5 is a whole number. So is he correct? No, he is incorrect. So in other words, what you want to show, you don't have to pick 10, as long as you're picking an even multiple of 5 and dividing by 2 and showing that it gives you a whole number, then that would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 19, it says translate the triangle so that the point A points to point B. So all we then need to do is simply just move this point over to there. So that's going to be here and like so. And we just need to, and I've just drawn that too big, so let me just do that again. And it should be something that looks like this. And shading is obviously going to be optional, but you do want to make sure that your triangle is neat and also 2 by 1. So then moving on to question 19b, it says rotate the triangle 90 degrees anti-clockwise. So for this, you may need to use your tracing paper, and if you do this correctly, you should find that where your triangle should be is it should be there. Then moving on to question 20, it says here is a formula. Work out the value of v when x equals 10 and h equals 7. So we've got v equals, and it's going to be a half times 10 squared times 7. So here we've got a half times 100, which is 50. So it's going to be 50 times 7, which is 350. It then says for question 21, it says pens are sold in boxes of 10, pencils are sold in boxes of 8, rulers are sold in boxes of 5. A teacher wants to buy the same number of pens, pencils and rulers. Work out the smallest number of boxes of each item sheet there that he could buy. So here if we look at pens, and we know that comes in packs of 10. So if I just write down the first multiples of 10, and I'll leave a bit of space, then I go for pencils, which comes in packs of 8. So again, I just start off by writing the 8 times table, and you can see that 40 comes in both. And then the final one, which is rulers, which comes in packs of 5. So I've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. And you can see that the smallest number that appears in all 3 of those lists is going to be 40. So I need 40 of each, which means then if pens come in packs of 10 and I want 40, I'm going to need 4 packs of pens or boxes. If pencils come in boxes of 8 and I want 40, I'm going to need 5 of those. And if rulers comes in packs of 5 and I need 40, well, I just need to count. How do I need to do? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And there is my final answer. Then moving on to question 22, it says the scatter diagram or scatter graph shows the number of driving lessons and the number of tests needed to pass for 10 people, or by 10 people. It says what proportion of the 10 people passed their test, passed their first test. So here we're looking for number 1, and we can see that we've got 3 people that have passed first time. It then says what type of correlation does the graph show? I would go along, and it's only worth 1 mark, so I just need to say whether it's positive, negative or no correlation, but this does show some positive correlation. and you don't need to go on the strength, because if it was worth 2 marks then you'd probably get a mark for strength. But if you did write the strength, I would say it's got strong correlation, strong positive correlation rather. It then says use a line of best fit to estimate the number of tests needed to pass by a person who has had 50 lessons. So for this, what you do need to do is draw your line of best fit as best that you can. Remember, your line of best fit does not have to start at 0. It can go through some of the points, and you want to try and make it so that you've got the same number of points above the line as you've got below. And I will going to go for that. There is where I'm going to go for it. Now, once you've drawn your line of best fit, what you then want to do is to find 50 lessons, go up to your graph till it hits your line of best fit, and then scroll across. So I would say that you're looking at 4. So an answer roughly around 4 would be absolutely fine. Now you also want to give a whole number, simply because you can't have a decimal number of tests, so just be mindful of that. Now moving on to question 22D, it says Selma says I can use the trend to predict the number of driving tests needed to pass for any number of driving lessons, and we want to comment on this statement. It's only worth 1 mark. Now what you want to try and do is just basically state that that's technically not going to be true, because we can only really use this line of best fit for people who have had roughly between 30 and 65 lessons. So she's wrong. Let's write that again. So she is wrong, as we can only use the line of best fit for people who have had between 25 and 65 lessons. Now you could also say something along the lines of, there's loads of things you can comment on this, that basically if you've had 25 lessons then you'd need 0 tests to pass, which doesn't quite make sense, because obviously that's not going to be the case. You could also say that the 10 people, this only really applies to the 10 people. Another person could be completely different to those 10 people. A person could be more experienced, it could be less experienced. So there's quite a lot of arguments you could write to say that she is wrong. But as long as you state that she is wrong with a valid reason, then that's going to be absolutely fine. Question 23 then says which of 7/8 or 1 1/5 is closer to 1. So what you want to do is you want to convert each of these fractions into a decimal. So here if I do 8 divided by 7, so here I have 8's going to 7 0 times, so I carry that forward, and I've got a 7 there. So how many 8's going to 7? Well, that's going to be 9. No, it's going to be 8, and the remainder of 6. How many 8's going to 60? Well, that's going to be 7, remainder 4. And then how many 8's going to 40? That's going to be 5. So the decimal equivalent is 0.875. Now, how far away is that from 1? Well, that is going to be minus 0.125 away. Then if we look at 1 1/5, well, that converted to a proper fraction is going to be, an improper fraction I should say rather, is going to be 6/5. And 6/5 as a decimal is going to be 1.2, which is plus 0.2 away. So which of these is closer to 1? Well, it's going to be 7/8. Moving on to question 24, it says we've got a simultaneous equation. We want to find the values of a and b. So as you can see, when solving simultaneous equations, we want to try and get one of the letters the same quantity. So I can see I've got the same number of b's. They're both the same sign, so I take the two things away. So 3a take away a is 2a, and 25.5 take away from 16.5, well, that's going to give me an answer of 9. So a, therefore, is going to equal 9 over 2, which is 4.5. So a equals 4.5. So then if I then use a plus 2b equals 16.5, I know a is 4.5. So then if I take that away, I end up with 2b equals 12, and so B equals 6. Then moving on to question 25, says in the diagram the area of the triangle is 45 centimeters square, and the question is asking me to work out the length of AD. So first things first, I need to work out I can work this out by using what I know. So I know that base times height, so B times H divided by 2 equals the area. So from this I've got B base, which is going to be 18, times H divided by 2 equals 45. If I take the 2 over, that becomes 18H equals 90. So H equals 18 divided by 90, which I can divide both numbers by 9. So I get 10 over 2, which is 5. So H equals 5. Then from this, what I can then do is use Pythagoras to then work out what D is going to be. So here I've got, if I label this as A, B, and C, so here I've got that AD squared equals 12 squared plus 5 squared. 12 squared is 144 plus 25 is 169. And then so AD equals the square root of 169. You should know that 169 is a square number, and that square rooted is going to give me 13. Moving on to question 26, it says 3 straight lines are shown and we want to work out the value of y. Well, looking at the parallel lines, we can see that this angle here is going to be the same as this angle here because they are corresponding. So here we've got this, and then these two angles here must be equal to each other because they are opposite. So 3y minus 45 must equal 4y minus 100. So then if I take 3y's from both sides, I end up with minus 45 equals y minus 100. Then I take the 100 over to the other side by adding 100, in which then I get 55 equals y, and there is my final answer. Moving on to question 27, it says that a shape is made from rectangles. On the diagram below, shade an area represented by CD. Well, if I just work out the area of these, well, this area of this rectangle is AB. This one's going to be CD, this one's CD, this one is going to be AD, and this one here is going to be AB. So the ones I need to shade are either going to be this one here or that one there. The next question then says, on the diagram below, shade an area represented by AB. So again, if I just label each of these again, CD, AB, and CD. Now here we want 2 lots of AB, so I'm going to be shading in this region here and this one here. So you need to make sure you're shading both in for this one. Then for C, it says write down an expression for the total area. Well, again, if I just label each of these, and we've got CD and we've got AB. So looking at this, we've got 2 ABs, we've got 2 CDs, and we've got 1 AD, and there is my final answer. Moving on to question 28, it says Alan, Ben and Carl ran a 1,000-meter race. The distance time graph shows the race, and it says who won the race, give your reason for the answer. Well, to win a race you want the shortest time, so the shortest time is going to be for Ben, who finishes the race at 4.5 minutes. So the answer is Ben, and he finishes quickest, taking 4.5 minutes. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine. For B, it says describe the race now, and it's worth 3 marks. So what you want to do is you want to take each person and talk about what they've done. So here you're starting with Alan. So you could say Alan starts the fastest. He then takes a break. A half-a-minute break, so a 30-second break before continuing to finish at the same time as Carl. So that's Alan. You then want to talk about the next person. We talk about Ben. So Ben started second fastest. He then slowed down and then picked up the pace to finish first. And you could say the time, and that was 4.5 minutes. And we forgot to say the time as for Alan, and they finished at 5. And then we then need to talk about Carl. So Carl started the slowest, then picked up the pace to finish at 5 minutes. So something along those lines where you're mentioning all 3 people and a little description about how they did in each race. Because remember, the steeper the line, the faster they went, and along those lines will be absolutely fine. Then moving on to question 29, which is our last question. It says that 2 straight lines are shown. A is the midpoint of OB and B is the midpoint of TS. Work out the coordinates of T. So what we need to do first is actually just, if we label the coordinates, so this is going to be at 6, this is at 7, this here is at 25, and that is at 4. So B is going to be at the midpoint of that. So looking at this, we can see that the midpoint of A and B, so O and B, so this here is from 0 to 7, so that means that we need to add another 7, so this is going to be at 14, and if this is all the way up to 6, then we need to add another 6, and that becomes 12. So B is at 14, 12. Then comparing it from this point here, well, if I look at the dimensions of this particular triangle, we can see that going from 14 to 25 is 11, and going from 4 to 12 is going to go up 8. So then from this, if I then draw the same triangle of 8, 11, I then need to take away 11 from 14, which gives me an answer of 3, and I need to add 8 to 12, which gives me 20. So the coordinate of T is going to be at 3, 20. And that's the end of this particular paper.